Hey there, if you liked this episode, go ahead and buy my book on Amazon. What the book is called, type it on Amazon. It is Spoken by Trenton Epizon. Epizon is spelled Epizon. I really would appreciate the support. Give it a review, give it a buy, give it a try. And I promise you, you will not be upset at it. It is a poetry book. It is a very easy, quick read, and it definitely will give you some healing and some insight and some wisdom on abuse, mental health, recovery, the tragedy to triumph. You will love it. Give it a buy, give it a try, and recommend the book and this episode with others. Go ahead and give this podcast a follow and share it with others. You could be the reason that someone is alive tomorrow because you decided to share this episode today. This podcast is about saving lives, healing ourselves and others, and encouraging others and ourselves as well. Thank y'all so much for the support. Love y'all. I life y'all. I will see y'all next episode. You are valuable. You are beautiful. You are still on this earth because you have the strength. Thank you. Bye, folks. Yay! Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Vulnerability Time. I am your host and published author, Josias Abril. Yes, I changed my name. Remember that, folks, from Trenton Epizon to Josias Abril. Love a good name change. Folks, today we will be talking about men's mental health and its correlation to male suicide rates. I'm really interested in this topic. Interested to hear what our special guest, Mr. Logan, has to say, because it is no secret that, men's mental health isn't as talked about. And society speaking, mental health is, with men, it's kind of not a priority. So we're just gonna, here for that. This episode is for everyone. Um, you know, it's a great way to get, another perspective and some understanding on what goes on when it comes to mental health and suicide rates. So, with that being said, let us introduce our special guest. Okay, now let me get the correct credentials pulled out. Okay, so Logan is a licensed marriage and family therapist, okay, approved supervisor for American Association of Marriage and Family Therapy, certified trauma professional, an author, and a social media influencer. Boom. Logan, hello.
Hello, Josias. How are you doing?
Oh, Logan, I'm doing great. Logan, I have a question. You're an
Shoot.
author. Tell us a little bit about your book, Logan.
Sure. Wrote a book called How to Human Up in Modern Society, Heal Yourself, and Save the World. It goes through and taking a look at how humans have evolved over the last several hundred thousands of years and how the last few shifts in how human beings are living have really we haven't caught up with our software updates, so to speak, and we're dragging behind.
Yes.
In some ways to integrate the rest of your humanity, and especially with men in mind, um, as being in a position of having so much more privilege as a result of male privilege and historically patriarchal institutions driving our civilizations,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of the gender role conflict,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
making it very hard to see how to the the beauty and meat on the bone of empowering all voices for the human collective is incredibly important. So it's kind of my part in helping folks see that, and
Yeah.
especially for fellas.
And where can we buy this book?
You can find it on Amazon, at Barnes and Noble, at major book retailers. You can also find it on my website at logancohen.com and see a like free first chapter of it on
Yeah.
PDF. See if
Okay.
it resonates with you.
Yeah, and I am aware that those all that information will be in the episode description for this episode.
Cool.
So if um, anyone like me, like I suck at spelling, okay, anything. So it's nice to just go on an episode description, click a link, and just go right there. Um, yes. Okay. So what is the just to restate, what is the title of your book again?
Sure. How to human up in modern society. You know, the traditional phrase man up. This is a human up. It's up
Mm-hmm.
to all of us. Heal yourself and save the world.
I love that. And folks, you know we support on this podcast, so go check out his book, take a look at it, and he provides a free chapter. So read up on it. If it's for you, go for it. If it's not, and you think it might be for someone else, go ahead and let them know about it. Um, this is about healing and learning ourselves and others. Yes. Okay, so Logan, we're going to get
Sure.
to know you a little bit more as well. So,
Mhm.
licensed, so your credentials, I'm going to reread them. Licensed marriage and
Mhm.
family therapist, approved supervisor for American Association of Marriage and Family Therapy, certified trauma professional, as well as social media influencer and author. So, what
Yeah.
kind of got you into the route of, ooh, something I'm really curious about is the family therapy, excuse me, the licensed marriage and family therapist.
Sure.
Um, yeah, like what kind of got you,
No
started
doubt.
with that?
So I see. I went to undergraduate school at the University of Georgia, and I
Oh.
studied psychology. I've always been interested in it, and I was also, yeah, a young fella. As an adolescent, I grew up in a chaotic household. The parents with untreated mental health issues and addiction
Hmm.
stuff that was running rampant, and so it was something that I was always curious about and wanted to know more about, and had an intrinsic fascination with. Um, in growing up in that environment, also developed some early alcoholism stuff that
Hmm.
started getting pretty out of control when I was at the University of Georgia in Athens. It's a pretty big party school as well. And
Oh, yeah.
right after I graduated, um, I made the decision. And looking back, it was a pretty intuitive, wise thing to do as a 22-year-old guy. But I went to go work as a wilderness therapist with adjudicated
Oh,
youth, kids who were coming down from like, youth detention centers, the psychiatric
oh,
treatment facilities,
oh,
and
yeah.
for another like year or year and a half to learn how to live in a community setting again before coming into their
Yes.
natural settings.
Yes.
Um, so it was,
Yes.
and I took the job initially. On the surface, I was like, all right, this is really structured, psychology oriented. I'm not going
Mm-hmm.
to be able to use substances, so it'll give me an excuse to, I'll be able to get sober. And this is
Yeah.
obviously an issue for me, so I need to do this. So I did. And w- within the first 3 or 4 months, I just fell in love with the work.
Yeah.
Just,
Mm.
kind of lost myself in service, and enjoyed being sober and in the woods, and living with young people,
Yeah.
and also growing up in the environment that I did. I was the oldest, so kind
Mm-hmm.
of internalized some responsibility for looking out for folks. And
Mm-hmm.
in well, I ended up staying and working in that setting for about 3 years before going and getting a master's degree in marriage family therapy. And working with the youth, would see their younger siblings sometimes coming through and going like, dude, I just worked with your older brother for months and sent him back home, and like, you're, where the hell are you coming from, man? Like, that's where I need to get to. I need to get where y'all are coming from. So I
Yeah.
decided to go into family therapy. Specifically went out to Portland, Oregon, to a liberatory psychology program, and studied out there at Lewis and Clark College, it's called.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I Went to Portland State University last year, but I
Okay, cool.
transferred over to Ball State University for grad school, which is where I'm at now. But I remember hearing about Lewis and Clark College. I thought that was really unique and cool. I've never heard of it before until I moved there. So that's pretty dope. So, what is, I've been waiting to ask you this. So, what is the American Association of Marriage and Family Therapy?
It's
Just
the
curious.
national regulation board for all of the graduate
Oh,
programs in the country. And
oh,
so I supervise provisionally licensed marriage and family therapists. I'm like a certified nerd. I'm always been primarily into academia and clinical settings and
mhm,
training clinicians and teaching. It's what I've always done.
yeah. Oh, awesome. That's super cool. Certified trauma professional. Um, what all does that, sorry,
It's
what all does that mean? What does that encompass?
Sure. There's another certification that I got in addition to my license in marriage and family therapy. It's the clinical certified trauma professional. I'm actually level two clinical certified trauma professional. So someone who has a graduate level master's degree in counseling psychology and is already licensed in their state, you can
Mm-hmm.
get take more courses, and in addition to your license, add different certification onto it. So in working in those settings that I was working in, um, after I got my master's degree, I spent 12 years in community mental health settings because I was
Okay.
still really devoted to working with those youth,
Mm-hmm.
primarily that were, struggling.
Yeah.
And what I found in those spaces is I was treating attachment and developmental trauma, and
Oh,
especially with young men and like working with their families. And kind of knowing that that's what it was, and it was about everyone's relationships together, and how young people had internalized aspects of those relationships as pieces of themselves that actually had nothing to do with them,
right.
combined with them just kind of being generally freaked out about their environment. And so like, okay, I have all this, this is what I've always done. I'm just going to make sure I have more official certifications in those areas, because that's the work that I've always specialized in doing.
Right. That's super. Logan, I want to say this before we start um, getting into our topic. I want to, and I've been wanting to do this. I was going to thank you at our initial pre podcast appointment, but I wanted to give honor where honors due and thank you more publicly. Um, Logan, I want to
So
thank you not only for where you're at now and you're inspiring and stuff like that, and I want to thank you for what went on behind the scenes. You know, you've been through a lot from the little bit that you have told me. Um, and oftentimes we miss that. We applaud, when someone is on the stage, but we can forget that a lot happened behind the stage to get them to the stage. So
oh yeah, oh yeah,
that's what inspires me is, like I'm more inspired by um what went on behind the stage, you know.
sure,
So
sure.
I wanted to thank you.
No, absolutely, man, absolutely. It's something that I always say is when someone looks like what they do is really seamless and effortless,
Hmm.
don't it's a magic trick.
Hmm.
That it seems like that, or they've done it a million times so that it looks like this. um, and it's I wouldn't change any of the experiences that I had, because they kind of formed who I am. And I think as we keep talking, we find that a lot of the work that I've done and that I've been very motivated to do has all been passion projects. That's
Hmm.
kind of how I work. So
Hmm.
it's it, It's been what it's been. I
Yeah.
really appreciate you speaking to that.
Yes. Seriously. I.
And I want your listeners to also like, there's, you can find an incredible amount of
Mhm.
um, purpose in your pain.
Yes.
And I would argue that that ultimately is the purpose of it for animals.
Mhm.
It's incredibly salient information. We don't know we need to move until we hurt.
Mm.
And
Ooh, let me
it,
write that
yeah,
down.
it's just kind of a basic, like, part of what our animal kingdom does. And if you're going to experience it, and especially if you're going to have, traumatizing experiences, and you have a bit of that hypervigilance wrapped up in your system, and you know what it's like to be in some of those positions. Um, it, Once you learn how to make peace with enough of your own demons,
Mhm.
that's an incredibly profound gift to have, that no one else has like you do, whoever's listening to this.
Mhm.
And we need you to do that voodoo that you're here to do, because
Mhm.
everyone is here for a purpose, for a reason.
Yeah. I agree. I 1000% agree. I think that was really beautiful. I just want to restate that for a second time that Logan mentioned we don't know we need to move until we hurt. Wow. Wow. That, yeah. Yeah. That statement is in my notes section of quotes, of wise quotes I have heard over the years.
Mm,
And that is, thank you. Thank you for that. It's good to have
sure,
that
man.
reminder and that, knowledge um, and acknowledgement of, a lot of pain does serve its purpose. So
Absolutely.
thank you, Logan. So, Logan, let us get into men's mental health and its correlation to male suicide rates.
Sure.
Logan, why this topic?
Yeah. Just I primed you for it. Well, I grew up in this environment where I was doing high risk and uh, decisions from a pretty young age, and running with other people who were doing the same to
Mhm.
avoid our own pain. And statistically, those young people get addicted pretty early, and statistically, those young people usually don't become old people. So what I happen to get sober and figure some of my stuff out, working in the field and therapy, and getting healthy, and doing the work. Not many people do that. Um, so when
Yeah.
I you got all established and got, had my family and practice set up, and kind of picked my head up from the grind, I
Hmm.
started checking in on a lot of old friends, and I realized that several of them had passed
Hmm.
due to overdoses and suicides. What
Yeah.
I later came to understand as deaths of despair. Um, and kind of personally had a very strong reaction to this, and especially as a therapist and as someone who personally knew these people, and it was pretty tough. So I was personally looking for answers into what that was, um, and found this. So I started looking at the deaths of despair, and I said, okay, well, like, statistically, this is happening a lot. So many more men are dying from alcohol toxicity, overdose, and substance abuse. And then look further, it's also violence. It's also
Hmm.
chronic self neglect. It's
Yeah.
also all this other stuff that is rooted in a lot of very specific traditional gender roles and gender
Hmm. Hmm.
expectations, that
Yeah.
when they all intersect with each other, make us and keep us very sick in order to access male privilege. It's called
Hmm.
gender role conflict.
Hmm.
The more you want to be the more you want to access that leverage, the more you have to abide by those traditional manhood expectations, and the
Mm-hmm.
least you inherently value operating with the power of love, which
Mm-hmm.
creates just a vacuum of darkness within you, and impacts everyone else around you.
Right. Um, that's a good point. It's, mentioning stigmas and things of that nature. That's the that that's a silent pandemic right there is stigma.
Absolutely is.
Um, yeah, it brings up a whole bunch of, it can manifest in so many ways. Logan, I'm an McNair research scholar, and my research is called The Reality Behind the Mugshot. And
Mm,
that encompasses a lot of things. I won't mention everything for time's sake, um, but I've I've worked with a lot of folks that are incarcerated, and
mhm.
I will say this: like, I grew up hating men because of the trauma that I've been through. Um, but during my research, in the midst of me hating men, during my research of researching with, and I also call it working with and healing with, not working on or researching on like they're a bunch of objects. I call it, healing with them. I had so much compassion that for those males, I did not think that most of my research I would be geared towards the male incarceration community. But and the reason why I had so much compassion is because I learned that adverse childhood experiences, ACEs, 4 and up, it increases the likelihood for mental health problems, physical health problems,
Mhm.
incarceration,
Mhm.
addictions,
Mhm.
suicide rates. Um,
Absolutely.
and I just, and I looked and I was just like, you know what? I got so mad at our system a lot. I'm like, you know what? We're locking up the individual, but we're not locking down on the root problem. You know,
No.
do the crime, do the time, but what are we doing with that time? We could be so the system could be such a place of hope and redemption, but there is a lack of rehabilitation. That is why within 3 years of an individual being released, the recidivism rates are 68%. And for those who don't know what recidivism rates are, that's basically when someone is released from behind bars, they come right back. And that's within 3 years is 68%. Within
Mhm.
10 years, it's 83%. I believe within 6 years, it's 72%. But yeah, 3 years, 68%. Um, and I had to take a step back. I had to, even go to therapy because
Mhm.
of my research. I'm glad that I was doing it, but I just felt so overwhelmed with the realities behind the mugshot that we do not see. When we turn on the news, we just see a criminal. We just see a person, and this is not to
Mhm.
say that, adverse childhood experiences is a definite, like, if you have adverse childhood experiences, you're 100% going to get incarcerated. I'm not
No,
saying that,
absolutely not.
folks. Right, but it's just like there is a correlation for a lot of folks. There is a
Absolutely.
direct correlation, and you know, it helped humble me so much, towards the incarceration community. Is because once upon a time they were a child. A lot of us are just victims of circumstance, and now when I look at people's mugshots and I see the news bashing them, or I see this or I see that, I think I'm like, if that was a 3-year-old, I would not be bashing them. If that was a 3-year-old, I don't we would be like, oh, he's just a kid. Oh, they shouldn't punish him harshly. You know what I mean? I'm not saying, that I don't like using this word, but punishment um, isn't, you know,
The way that we do it in the systems, the institutions
mm-hmm.
that manage it, um, and unfortunately, it's intersected with capitalism,
Oh,
and the
yes.
federal government makes a lot of money on
So
how it all
much
works,
money.
and it intersects with racism and as well as sexual orientation in a lot of different ways, and it's pretty messy.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty messy, and especially for men. Um, if they're so for men, you know, we've even our physical bodies obviously have evolved slightly differently than women's.
Mm-hmm.
Like talking about like not gender, we're talking about sex of
Mm-hmm.
male and female bodies of
Right, from
the
birth.
sexual
Yeah.
organs,
Mm-hmm.
and how that if you get huge waves of testosterone and androgens at certain times and you become male bodied, what will occur is all the much more of the muscle tissue in your body is fast twitch muscle versus slow twitch muscle, which is much more powerful. It's our your shoulders are going to start broadening. You know,
Mm-hmm.
once you hit adolescence, is we our jobs have always been primarily been hunters and warriors.
Mm-hmm.
When like if and you look at all different animals, that's it tends to be how things work, especially for mammals.
Mm-hmm.
If females are killed, you know, we cannot propagate anymore, and the civilization, the tribe is screwed. So what happens is there started to be a lot of social pressure and cultural pressure for what you, historically has been called, you know, warriors and hunters. Is now called, it's the same thing. We just call it provider and protector. It's the same exact thing.
Right.
And there are all these leftover social and cultural pressures from basically training little boys. Like little boys historically were looked at as like German shepherds and pit bulls and mastiffs.
Mm-hmm.
It was like little
Mm-hmm.
working dogs. Like, all right, let's, you know, like get Spartan them up and getting them all
Yeah.
just like ready to be these hardened animals so they could
Yeah.
do these jobs. Now, a lot of those elements are still left over in the hyper independence and avoiding affection, especially with other men, and the emotional restriction and refusing to share the vulnerability. All these pieces that are required for intimate social connection are out because we're socially and culturally tried to be bred out of us, try to be like socially policed out of us,
Mm-hmm.
essentially. So what you get when little boys are struggling with mental health symptoms is you get externalizing symptoms. You don't get internalizing symptoms.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Internalizing symptoms, you're really shy, or like kids are running away or look scared. They might have anxiety, or kids are just like shutting down, look like they don't care, have excessive guilt all the time for things that make sense. That little kid might be depressed. Little boys ain't going to present like that
Right.
because little boys are getting their asses kicked with their
Mm-hmm.
peers and at home when they act anything that could look quote unquote weak.
Right.
So instead, they get mean, they shut down, they get irritable, they get combative, they get manipulative. They start using substances much more,
Mm-hmm.
and meanwhile in academics and in mental health, by and large, folks that are being attracted to those fields and where it's normalized to be the gender tends to be women
Mm-hmm.
as well. So you have all these folks who have probably had wonky experiences around grown men doing that stuff
Mm-hmm.
because I mean, how could you not have statistically? Like, good God, I think we realized during the Me Too movement, like, oh my God, this is awful.
Mm-hmm.
Um, in classrooms or as counselors or whoever for these little boys who are acting a fool and look like people who were really scary for these
Mm-hmm.
folks in
Mm-hmm.
their lives, and and they're getting diagnosed with conduct disorder and oppositional defiant disorder, and they say that they
Hmm.
just, boys will be boys or whatever. It's like, no, that kid's anxious, or that kid's depressed,
Right.
or that kid's medicating himself way too much, or whatever, and that keeps going. Those externalizing behaviors start becoming obsessions with controlling the environment, or the power, or the love of power, versus learning how to encounter authentically. And
Right.
those folks become dangerous. Those folks become liabilities in community settings, when underneath they're, as you were saying earlier, a lot of times it's scared, hurt little boys that,
Hmm.
and no one would have any idea.
Right. 1000%. Um, Gosh, I forgot what I was gonna say. I was so in tuned. I was so in tune with this conversation. I was like, yes,
That's cool.
Logan, and it is to my understanding. And I, a few years ago, when I, when I first started being a research scholar in the McNair program, um, very hard to get into, by the way. I am very proud of myself. I am very proud of myself.
Good.
A lot of work. I am very proud of myself. But yes, 72%. This is when I first started the program. The suicide rates meant 72% of suicides in America were men. I
Mhm.
researched that what a year ago, and it went up to 77%. So when I see those things like that, I say like over 72%, or at least 72%. That
Mhm.
majority of them are males, and it. What are your thoughts on that, Logan?
Yeah. So, um, as being very stuck in those primarily provider protector mentalities, where we're willing to devalue ourselves, and are and have a very limited range of emotional awareness, and don't know how to attune to our shame or our fear, and work through it and regulate ourselves
Right,
through it,
right.
because we've
Yeah,
been conditioned to believe that even experiencing those emotions is
right.
shameful, so we just get locked in it.
Yeah, it's kind of like,
um
men be afraid of, I mean, men like be afraid of every single emotion except anger. Anger can
oh,
show
totally.
strength.
Oh yeah, you're not gonna. No one's gonna try to take your man card from you getting angry anywhere. No
Right.
one's gonna say you're a p word.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh, we can
and
say it on here.
oh, I'm not gonna say it. I don't say it in my own home,
Oh, okay.
especially after I had daughters. I can't, because it's
Yeah.
I can't. We got to stop calling assertive women bitches, and
Right.
emotional men sensitive. We got to, like, and we got
Yeah,
to
that
stop
needs to go.
having, like, there's so much of it is embedded in our linguistics, because
Hmm.
like that's so much of who we are and how we operate and what formulates our realities as humans. And I'm glad
Hmm.
we're talking about it too, because I think that's an important part of the conversation, both literally and meta. um,
Mm.
but it's there is a distinct male shame around a lot of parts of being human, and especially the parts that hurt and are scary. And when that happens, men double down on isolating themselves and devaluating themselves, and being willing to do whatever is necessary to get the job done, including taking yourself out.
Right. Hmm. Um, Something that you had mentioned reminded me of what I wrote in my poetry book. I said, basically, I was talking about my father, um,
Mhm.
and also society. About like it says in my poetry book, one of the poems says, "Be a man, be a man, be everything but human."
Hmm.
It's like we are human first. Like, we are
Uh-huh.
human first, and the human
Absolutely.
has, yeah, like human has these emotions and stuff like that. And another thing that I wanted to mention, when it comes to, suicide, which I'm really
Mhm.
glad that, we're mentioning this here in season two, more in depth, because it is something that needs to be talked about. It's a thing. We can try to ignore it, and that is the problem. We we ignore it until it's too late, and then and then we're just like, oh, well, they were so happy, or and I'm like, suicide and depression, it doesn't always look like a sad face. It can look like the biggest smile. I
Twitch. Twitch just passed.
Yeah, Twitch, Kate Spade, Robin Williams, and it's like, and that lady who won Miss Universe,
Hmm.
or was it Miss America? It was either Miss, it was, I think it was Miss Universe. But I don't know, it was that African American lady. I can't think of her name,
Yeah.
but y'all know who she is, and she jumped off of her condo 33 feet, 33 floors, you know, and two things that I want to mention. Um, I've heard, oh, why didn't they tell me anything? Or, and there's a lot of people, who say that, but they are the ones that, not everyone, this is just my experience. The folks are like, oh, I didn't know. They didn't tell me. You didn't want to know. You didn't want them to tell you because it's too uncomfortable. You don't know how to go about it. You don't know how to deal with it. Um, I what I learned to do, because I needed this done for me, is, I don't. I needed someone to listen. Um, yes, of course, I also went to therapy and still go to therapy. Love therapy. You know, um,
It's
I
good stuff.
also researched, things that were happening to my body. How physical abuse, how sexual abuse affected me, you
Hmm.
know, um,
Hmm.
things of that nature. Because I didn't want to feel quote unquote crazy. So it's just like, wow, I'm not alone. And everything that I'm feeling and thinking and how my body is responding, it makes complete sense. You know,
Very
um,
few people are actually crazy.
right,
Yeah.
exactly. And it's like, but, I was that big smile. You know, folks know now in my life, and I'm starting to, take even more just pride in being just proud of my story. Um, thank God. Yeah, because when I was 15, I took pills to end my life, and no one knew. I was brought back to life in my room. No one knew. I was brought back. I was like in the
Wow.
midpoint of, you know, I'm alive, but I'm dead, but I'm not fully dead. Folks who have attempted and know what I'm talking about, they can understand what this means because I can't really explain it. It's kind of like a midway between death and life. But I took a bunch of pills and I committed suicide, and I was brought back to life. And that is a story that I'm going to talk about on the season finale of this season, season two. Um, really, I'm really excited to share that. But, I was told, oh, suck it up. You know what I mean? I was, I was ignored, and I
Hmm.
just think about it, and I always was taught, oh, people who commit suicide, that's the weak way out. They're weak. And I'm like, no, they have been strong for too long. Like, the fact that, like, it's, it is something that needs to be talked about. Because,
There's a huge biological imperative to not killing yourself. Like,
right.
animals really don't want to do that.
Hmm.
So if a sentient being does that, um, intentionally, it took. it was very scary,
Right.
and
Exactly.
they jumped. Like it's not it's a you can't call it a coward's move. You can call it a lot of different
Exactly.
things, but you can't call it that.
Exactly. And I completely 100% agree. It it took a cuz it's like I'm on fire and I did everything to try to put the fire out, but it wasn't working. Um, I didn't do everything, but at that time, I did the best that I could with the little small minded environment that I had, you know. Um,
Hmm.
and it is scary. I do not believe it's a coward move. I think it's not a coward's move. You know what I mean? And I was conditioned to think certain things, and then once I experienced it, once I became suicidal, once I started self harming, I understood from experience how complex that is, and that's the thing. That's what's scary when we try to weather a storm that we've never been through. We can end up hurting someone because we're telling them how they should feel. We're telling them their circumstance when we never, ever, ever experienced it. So there's a lot of black and white thinking when it comes to suicide. And I'm just, be careful, folks. You don't want to experience it to understand that that is complex. It is gray area. It is gray area,
Yeah,
bringing ration to an irrational situation that is not the person's fault. I mean, and I don't know if you've heard of this before, Logan, but um, a lot of times, and I've heard this from folks who have survived suicide, and I've experienced this myself. Is like once we do the act, we feel an extreme regret. I don't It's not of this world. I was like, whoa. Have you ever heard of that before, Logan? Folks experiencing
yeah.
that extreme regret.
I would say, like 9 out of 10 times that people attempt. So for a few, when I was living in Portland, I also worked at a suicide prevention hotline, and um, every now and again, I would get a call from someone who would have a very put together story about why they're about to take their life,
Hmm.
and it would actually make a lot of sense. And I mean, I wouldn't say it directly as this, but like, I get why you're doing this, and
Right,
it's hard to even play devil's advocate with you right now.
right.
Um, it just usually having a chronic disease that is incredibly painful, and they're
Hmm.
totally alone, and they're just up crap creek without a paddle. And the people in those positions probably don't feel a lot of regret after they go beyond the point of no return.
Right.
But generally, everyone else always does,
Hmm.
because there are a lot of mixed feelings that go into that kind of decision, and
So complex. Yeah.
yeah, that's tough, and every one of them is unique. So
Right. Yeah. I completely agree. And I'm a huge advocate for suicide awareness because I myself am a suicide survivor. Um,
appreciate you
didn't
sharing
want
that.
to
Yeah,
be, but here I am. And I'm not glad I experienced that. I'm not. It's horrible. However, um, I do now have, I'm able to relate and be 99% present with an individual who is thinking about that. And the reason why I say 99% is because um, that 1%, we are not that individual. Like, the story may be similar, but
mhm.
it's probably quite not the exact same. We have a lot of things that we can relate on. But to be more present with that individual, as present as possible. You know, I can see the signs a lot of times, in folks. Um, I see the signs, and then and folks, if you're listening to this, I want you to know, do not have shame on yourself when I say this. Don't you have that shame? But if you have not experienced what it's like to be suicidal or the complexity, please, okay, look, don't be black and white with the person. Do not tell them they're weak. You know, don't do that. Don't, and sometimes, at least from my experience, sometimes it can be beneficial, say, oh, but, you know, what about us and what about this? But then I also started to think about it, and I'm like, it's more than just, oh, I'm gonna stay on this earth for y'all. It's so much more than that. It's like, what about me? Like, what about me? You know what I mean? You want me still on this earth so that you can feel less guilty, and and it's like that the problem necessarily isn't, oh, I'm gonna stay here for y'all. The problem is, like, I'm trying to stay here for myself. Like, and it's like, what about me? Like, I don't see that I have much to live for. So it's like,
It's
what about
and it's
me?
something
That's,
that people who are not in that position, that
yeah.
or have never experienced that, like totally, usually completely drop the bag with.
Yeah.
And American culture really sets us up to do that as well.
Mm-hmm.
We have our culture is very steeped in a conservative fundamentalism,
Mm-hmm.
which looks at mental health as a sign that you lack faith in God.
Right.
Um,
What is
so
up
it's
with
like
that?
automatically, well, we were founded by Puritans. Like it's just, and part of it
Yeah.
just is what it is, you know? Like I think Americans, we have this narrative, parts of our narrative are so like we're progressive because
Mm-hmm.
we have this huge, at least socially and culturally, melting pot thing that happens, which makes our shit bomb as hell, like all of it. Um, but that doesn't mean, or most of our stuff bomb it, like our music, our food, our like our dancing, like it's all just
Right.
like awesome because it all converges here.
Right.
Um, and cities just paved with streets of gold. Like there are all these things that
Right.
paint us as very progressive. We're not socially and culturally progressive. We're like maybe a few clicks up from Saudi Arabia, but not even that many.
Right. Logan, so, ooh, that's really interesting that you mentioned that, because I definitely have been choked in the realm of, you know, oh, if you're suicidal, that means you don't have faith in God or something like that. Like, I've definitely been manipulated
Craziness.
and
Just
shamed.
religious abuse.
Yeah,
It's religious
exactly. It's
abuse,
religious
spiritual abuse.
abuse, spiritual abuse,
Yeah.
spiritual trauma is real. Um, so I want to speak on that really quick. For folks who you know, believe in God, and have
Mm.
been told or tell others, oh, you're too blessed to be stressed, or oh, you shouldn't think that way, or you don't need medication, or God is the God of this. Look, none of that says that you're immune to being suicidal. In fact, folks listening, Numbers chapter 11, verse 11 through 17, Moses has a suicidal moment. In First Samuel, Hannah is honest with God and feels like God is neglecting her. Genesis 27, verse 46, Rebecca is depressed, hopeless, weary, and suicidal. 1 Kings chapter 19, verse 4, Elijah is hopeless, weary, and suicidal. Job chapter 3, verse 11, I'm almost finished. Job is
Mm-mm.
suicidal, weary, and depressed. Jonah chapter 4, verse 1, Jonah is suicidal and hopeless. Jonah chapter 4, verse 9, Jonah is angry with God. Okay, and lastly, Habakkuk chapter 1, verse 2 to 3, that name is funny, Habakkuk. Habakkuk is frustrated and questioning God and is upset. Habakkuk. So I was not ever taught that. And I was forced to go to church, and my
No,
dad was a pastor,
hell no, you
unfortunately.
weren't taught. Hmm.
Exactly. And I've heard people say, well, you just got to read the Bible. You just got to read the Bible. You're not supposed to be suicidal.
Read
I was
their
like, oh,
interpretation of the Bible.
exactly. And I was like, oh, but y'all don't hear this? Oh, this is here. Oh, no, no, no. Suicide is in the Bible. And guess what? God didn't give up on them. He did not give up on them. So it's just like, it doesn't mean that you're lacking in faith or this or that. That is not, things are not so black and white. And another two things that I wanted to touch on is mental health should be a priority, not a privilege. And you've kind of, you know, summarized this. That's definitely what I see a lot is that mental health is a privilege rather than a priority, and that needs to be shifted. I've done some research, and based off the little bit of research that I've done when it comes to how neglecting mental health will get the those huge corporations more money. I don't see that.
Hmm.
I don't see that. So like,
Oh, you don't
because
see it?
right,
How
because like when
neglecting
I
mental health
do
gets companies more money? Well,
right.
because the worse people's mental health symptoms are, the more chronically dysregulated they are. The more
Mm.
chronically dysregulated they are, the more people want to escapism buy shit.
Oh, yes, yes. So they'll self-medicate. They'll buy, and that's also another thing about when it comes to medications. You know what I mean? I feel like big pharma. I'm not a fan of big pharma. I would
Hmm.
say, I thank them for providing medication, but I don't fully agree with them. Them being big pharma. It is easier for someone to go down the street and buy marijuana for $20 than it is to not only um and I feel like medicine can be way too expensive.
Hmm.
Okay, and so it's like it seems like it's all a cycle. Like this person's gonna buy this quote unquote illegal drug, for $20 down the street. Oh, they get caught. They go into the system, which there are 8 corporations that run state prisons, and they make so much money off of recidivism rates. That is research, and it's very sad, very strategic, and it disgusts me. Or you could pay insurance, you know, pay for these medications. So it's like either way, there is being a lot of money thrown in, and I just thrown in to these corporations, and I don't agree with it. And lastly, we live in a very neoliberalistic society. And I've talked about the word neoliberalism. Folks, what that means, it means individualistic. That's what that word means. It doesn't mean liberal or nothing like that. It just literally means the word, it's a fancy word for individualistic. And I feel like this can definitely, correlate and seep its way into, suicide and mental health because we're told and we're conditioned you got to do everything. It's like hello, we are humans. We did not go from the hunter gatherer days, from the caveman days, doing everything on our own. We needed each other.
Hmm.
And people can be, and that can also push people into um feeling lonely and being alone when mental health and suicide, because it's like everyone's telling them, well, you're the problem, or there's something you're not doing, you're you know do not describe the water that I'm drowning in. Do not high five me in the water that I'm drowning in. How about you get in the water with me and hug me, or just support me until I get out of the water. You blaming someone for something that's not in their control, or just I just help them, encourage them, Because a lot of the times, it's like, here, this is what I'm trying to say. Let me restate. It's like neoliberalism is, it doesn't matter. Here's an example. It doesn't matter how many hands have traumatized you. It's up to you to fix everything. Who cares who broke down that building? Only you can build it up. And it's just like, unfortunately, sometimes that's what we have to do. However, that don't like we don't necessarily have to do that. It is okay to get help. Folks, it is okay to help your friend. It's okay to help your friend. If it took an army to break them
and
down, let it be an army to help build them up. We shouldn't do it on our
and
own.
and and if you feel uncomfortable with that when someone is bringing it to you, I would just remind them that they can call the suicide hotline. Like
Mm-hmm.
there's a very established
988.
national suicide hotline. People are trained to do this stuff. Very few people kind of know how to respond to this when it happens. A lot of folks are going to be clunky with it.
Mm-hmm.
Use the hotline, please.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the new number is 988 for the suicide
988.
hotline, folks. I will put that in the episode description. Let me go ahead and put that, make sure in my notes so I remember it. Okay, 988. Yeah, they had recently just changed it. I'm glad they did. It's a more convenient number than the longer one. I don't know. I could just feel like it's a less of a deterrent factor.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then they're great with reaching out to other resources. Suicide hotline. They got anyone's back. They got your back. Whether you just want to learn, or whether you're someone's going through it, whether you're going through it, they got your back. They got your back, folks. Um, so with that being said, Logan, is there anything else that you wanted to? Did we kind of touch everything that you wanted to?
Yeah, yeah. Enjoyed the chat with you today.
Yes, Logan. We, as listeners of this podcast, we are so full of gratitude. However, I want to personally thank you, Logan. Thank you for overcoming all of those days that came against you. I literally see someone that has overcome 100% of the bad days. Why? Because look at you. You're still here, and it's not been easy, you know? So I'm super duper proud of you. You inspire me. Okay, I'm getting emotional.
Th-
Ooh,
Thanks for
let's
letting
go
me
ahead.
be a small part of your journey, man.
Yeah,
Sincerely.
dude. Appreciate you. So I'm gonna end the podcast, but you stay on just a little bit longer, so I can like
Hmm.
tell you kind of like little what's gonna happen after the podcast.
Cool.
Alrighty. With that being said, folks, if no one has told you today that they love you, please allow me to be the first, and then allow yourself to be the second. Even if you don't believe it, it's okay if you don't believe it. It's an affirmation. You don't always have to believe after affirmations at first. Just say it. Um, I love you and I life you. Thank you for being born. Thank you for still being here on this earth. Thank you. All the days that tried to attack you and take you out, I'm so proud of you. There's more, oh man, there's more angel and warrior in you than you may think. Winning is not always a feeling, a lot of times it is an action. So, folks, if you're listening to this, I need you to know that you have won. Alrighty, folks, I will see y'all next episode, episode 2. Um, we'll be talking about surviving the battle with special guest and public speaker Tiffany. Ooh, what does surviving the battle mean? See, I didn't even know. I didn't even know until we started recording. I told her, I was like, don't you tell me anything about this, what you want to talk about. Just surprise me. So, folks, I will see y'all next episode. It'll be coming out this Friday. Um, with that being said, thank y'all so much. And thank you once again, Logan. We truly, truly do appreciate you.
Absolutely.
Alrighty.
Thank you again.
Hey there, if you liked this episode, go ahead and buy my book on Amazon. What the book is called, type it on Amazon. It is Spoken by Trenton Epizon. Epizon is spelled Epizon. I really would appreciate the support. Give it a review, give it a buy, give it a try, and I promise you, you will not be upset at it. It is a poetry book. It is a very easy, quick read, and it definitely will give you some healing and some insight and some wisdom on abuse, mental health, recovery, the tragedy to triumph. You will love it. Give it a buy, give it a try, and recommend the book and this episode with others. Go ahead and give this podcast a follow and share it with others. You could be the reason that someone is alive tomorrow because you decided to share this episode today. This podcast is about saving lives, healing ourselves and others, and encouraging others and ourselves as well. Thank y'all so much for the support. Love y'all. I life y'all. I will see y'all next episode. You are valuable. You are beautiful. You are still on this earth because you have the strength. Thank you. Bye, folks.